Okay, you indicated, I think from what I've read on your website and different things I've seen, you've indicated that all animals were vegetarians in the Garden of Eden before man's fall. Is this because eating other animals is considered bad? And I kind of want to get into theology a little bit here, I guess.
Okay, you will find that Genesis reveals a picture of the world totally different from Charles Darwin's kill or be killed, right? So that in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 31 it says God saw everything he made and it was very good. In verse 30 God is telling Adam what all the animals will eat. They will eat only the plants and the herbs, the fruits, etc. So step one, if they didn't kill each other, that certainly would have been a much nicer planet. The zebra did not get stressed out because he was worried about lions leaping out of trees, right? And neither did we. So it is a totally different starting point. By the time you get to Genesis chapter 3, where you discover we rebel against God, and God has already warned us, the penalty of sin is death. From Genesis chapter 3 onwards, you see a sad degeneration where more and more creatures, first we begin to kill each other, then we begin to kill the animals, then they begin to kill each other and to kill us, right? And our relationships have fallen apart. Right. That's basically the history of the planet. In terms of, why is it there? Answer is because God made it that way, not because we morally get abhorred at a cat ripping the eyeballs out of a puppy dog, right? I don't like that, but neither does the dog. But in the world we live in at the moment, here's what Darwin has done. He looks around, he sees the lion eating the zebra, right? And he assumes it's always been like that. And God, who was there, said, no, it wasn't.
Right. So, back to my question, is it considered bad? I mean, like you said, the Garden of Eden was created, everything was good, it was a good work, right? And after the fall of man, so I mean, obviously, then animals eating animals was stressful, and it was bad. It wasn't good. Does this mean that eating animals is bad now, or is
okay?
Like,
you will find.
Do you advocate vegetarianism, or?
You will find initially the Bible teaches we were openly vegetarian, the animals and the people. Then, as I said, in chapter 3, we sin, death comes onto the planet. You find Cain killing his brother, okay? By the time you get to Noah's Ark, you're only 6 chapters down, 1700 years down in history, there's still not the slightest, excuse me, of creatures savaging each other to eat each other. Violence is definitely on the planet. But after Noah's flood, it's intriguing because Genesis chapter 9 launches into a new set of sub-rules for diet. Chapter 8 finishes this way. Noah's got off the plank, his wife's off the ark, the boys are all off, and all the animals are unloaded. And God says from now till the end of the world, there'll be winter, there'll be summer, there'll be cold, there'll be heat, and there never was any cold before. Adam and Eve was created stark naked, as you remember from your Bible stories, right? It never got too cold. He didn't have a hat on. It never got too hot. He didn't have plus 31 sunburn cream, etc. By the time you get to the other side of Noah's flood, the weather has fallen apart. It's climate change, long before any of the causes that we suggest today. But then an interesting thing happens. The Bible reports that God steps into the picture, and in chapter 9 and verse 3 onwards, he says to Noah, just as I told you could eat the green plants, from now on you can eat the moving creatures. But you must not eat their blood, okay, for the life is in the blood. And you scratch your head and say, why would God let us do that? Okay, I come from Australia. 3/4 of Australia is barren, scrubby country. And you think, okay, God knew, even if I didn't. Some of us would end up in Central Australia, some of us would end up in Alaska. If you can imagine trying to be a committed vegetarian Eskimo, you've got the picture, right?
Right.
You just can't get your greens all year. But God says, eat that moose, because the moose digs down through the snow, he gets all the dried grass, then you eat the moose, who's a collection of vegetables with a leg at each corner, right? And you survive, it survives, not as well as you used to, right? But you can survive, whereas if you tried to be a veggie, you couldn't. So God did authorise the move to non-vegetarianism. But I do have to warn the Americans, they eat too much meat.
Okay. I'm going to skip a few questions here, just kind of get to... What was I going to say? I saw an interview once with Michael Behe, a notable intelligent design theorist, and he's he talks about how if the evidence bears itself out that he's perfectly willing to subscribe to a more theistic view, like Ken Miller's or Francis Collins. What do you take on that? Is it necessary to have a literal interpretation of the Bible to be saved or to be a Christian?
Okay. The nice sounding philosophical openness of Michael Behe's statement reveals its weakness when you say, okay, Michael, what would you be looking for that would push you in that direction? To which there's no answer unless he says, well, it's naturalistic or it's totally theistic. The next level of statement says, why do you believe you can be rational anyway? And again, you're back to man made in the image of God. Okay, so you believe that bit literally. You believe God created. So that Keith, what's his name, Brown, he has this belief that God created. So he believes verse 1, the first half, is literal. After that, he tries to make it symbolic. Now, you remember Charles Darwin? Do you know what he graduated in? Theology. Right. Charles Darwin, by the time he'd finished writing all his books, regarded the Old Testament as a book of fables, of fallacies, of fantasies. It was erroneous. It was wrong. So any theologian who says, well, let's put God and the Bible together, Charles Darwin would have been the first to publicly disagree with them. And the crunch line comes if you claim to be a Christian, right, and you say, well, I believe in Jesus, who said he was the way, the truth, and the life. You have to ask this question here. What did he say about many of these Old Testament stories? And the simplest statement is out of John chapter 5, where he said, if you don't believe Moses, you don't believe me. Moses, 10 Commandments, 6 days God created. But there's a more important consequence. Why did Jesus have to die? Answer, with Adam came sin, and with sin came death. You don't die because you get old, you die because you're a sinner. Okay. So when Jesus died, but he hadn't sinned, legal and moral dilemma. If you don't sin, you shouldn't die, but if you don't sin and you do die, you're dying for somebody else's sin, not your own. There's the crunch line of Christianity. The minute you put millions of years of death and struggle as part of history, the whole of your Bible falls apart, not just the bits you want to try and spiritualize.
Okay, why did God then, what was the purpose of, I'm asking you to speculate here, I guess. What is the purpose of creation if there's billions and billions of people who have lived who obviously don't subscribe to this worldview and haven't accepted Jesus Christ? Some haven't even had the opportunity to. Some, belong to other faiths. There's billions and billions of people right now suffering in hell. Why would God create a world that, I assume you believe that he knew what was going to happen when he created it, that ultimately his creation would lead to billions of people suffering in hell.
He not only knew, he warned Adam what would happen if Adam disobeyed. Now, Adam being made in God's image, God, what's God like? What's an image of God like? You remember the Lord's Prayer? Our Father who art in heaven, thy will be done. So the only way Adam could be made in God's image, if God has a will, we have to have a will. The only way you can have a will is if there's at least 2 choices to make. Adam chose one of them. He did so knowing what the penalty would be because God had told him. But having made that choice, Adam now brings up his children. Okay, now whether we like it or not, we live on a planet in which the father is responsible for the way his children is brought up, and God, as a wise ruler, does not step in and say, you won't do that, I'm going to take those kids off you. The state might do that, right? But God leaves the responsibility to you. I noticed this particularly. I grew up beside a family in which the father was a drunkard. My father didn't get drunk. We could afford textbooks, they couldn't. The end result is unbelievably different. That father is to blame, not God. So when you get to Noah's Ark, everybody on that boat knew that God had the power to judge. But you then see 3 family lines in which very quickly one of them rejects God and begins to invent his own versions of history. And you get Nimrod inventing humanist religion. And everybody who's under his authority, whether you like it or not, he's the big daddy, he'll kill me if I don't, right? And you follow that line. So somewhere between there and the little pygmies in Africa, a father decided to reject God. His children have paid a terrible price. But don't say God doesn't care about them, because remember that little old lady who was a missionary in China? Why did she spend all of her life talking to Chinese when she could have got rich in America? Answer, because God so loved the world, he not only sent his only son, he sent that lady to make sure they would know.
Okay. I think we're just about out of time. So thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time out
Good,
to
pleasure. Go to
interview me.
creationresearch.net and find some more.